All right, so moving on to our personal and professional growth segment. We've talked a lot over the last previous months team huddles on leadership. So today, I just wanted to go over, since we've been through that whole progress of, what it looks like to lead and the 5 different levels of leadership, and how title is not a leadership. That's step one of the leadership ladder, is that people do what you say to do because you have a title. That's not leadership. That's position, right? And as you ascend the 5 levels of leadership, it more becomes about who you are, what you get done, and how you pour into other people, and who you are as a person, right? That's how you ascend the ladder of leadership. So since we've talked about that in depth, what I wanted to talk about today is 12 wake up calls that every leader needs to hear. And again, just as a reminder, before we go over these 12 things, leadership is something that every single one of you are. Whether anybody's ever called you a leader before is irrelevant, because leadership is influence, and influence is the ability to affect change. And you can do that at any position in a company. You can do that in any position out there in the world. It doesn't matter at your church if you are the pastor or not, you have the ability to affect change, and that's leadership. Things move because people move. Things move because people take initiative. Things move because people take responsibility. You don't have to have a title in order to lead, and to lead well. So all of us are leaders, and these 12 wake up calls are vital, because not only do they help us become a better leader, they help us in our current position, not just in the future. So leadership is all about growth. It's all about growing as an individual and having this constant state of growth and an open mind. And I think these 12 different things will help illustrate that greatly, in my opinion. So, number one is, if your team is failing, look in the mirror. You're the problem. That's a tough one, because sometimes we have somebody that we're leading, right? Maybe in our department, that really does something that they shouldn't have done. And you may say, well, that wasn't my fault. It doesn't matter if it was your fault. It matters that you take responsibility. Why? Because if all we do is cast blame, then what happens to our ability to affect change? Goes to zero. So it's a painful lesson that's really hard, is the fact that if my department is failing, it is my fault. That is the default leadership responsibility attitude. Even if somebody did something out of line, even if somebody violated a policy, even if somebody let something happen with a kid because they grabbed their phone and they were texting somebody and they did something irresponsible, even it doesn't matter. The attitude of a leader is always taking responsibility. Because when you do that, then you always ask yourself this question: what could I have done better? What could I have done different? How could have I prevented this situation? How could have I affected change? So when we have that attitude of responsibility, it opens up the possibility to affect change. When we cast blame, we give all that power away. He did this, she did this, they said that. And when we cast that blame and don't take the responsibility, even if it wasn't our fault, then we cap our leadership and our ability to affect change for the better. Does that make sense?
Strong as your weakest link.
You're only as strong as your weakest link. I love that saying, and it's so true. So if your team is failing, look in the mirror. You're the problem. Tough pill to swallow, but guess what? It's with me and with everybody else that's here. That is the attitude to embrace. Number two, if you cannot handle criticism, you are not fit to lead. Leadership is growth. There are going to be times where somebody has a different experience, who has a different perspective, who has a different way of looking at things, may add some criticism in a way to help you to grow. That is not a personal attack. When we view it as a personal attack, what do? We limit our ability to grow. Well, how can we lead if we're not growing? And the answer is you can't. You can't lead if you're not willing to grow, and you cannot grow if you don't have criticism, and criticism is not personal, it's for your growth. Now, it's easy for us when we look at children. We say, oh, of course they need correction. Well, all we are is older children. Okay? We're older, more experienced, hopefully more mature children, right? All we are is a little bit older, a little bit more experienced. I mean, we still need course correction. We still need someone looking over our shoulders saying, hey, did you think about this? Hey, I noticed when you did this, you could have used this angle. You could have used this approach. You could have done this different, could have done this better. That's not a personal attack. It's growth, right? So let's have the attitude of feedback. Yes. And the collective mind hive is so vitally important. Like I can make one decision and go do something on my own that I'm capable of doing. How much better is it if I ask a group like this, hey, here's my intention. I want to go do this. What do you guys think? It is so powerful. And what you get is feedback, right? But to the point, feedback and criticism are basically the same thing. So it's not a personal attack. When we view it as a personal attack, we limit our growth to zero. We cannot grow if we feel like every time somebody makes a recommendation or tells us we could do something different or better, if we take that as a personal attack, we cannot grow. And leadership is growth. So we have to have an open mindset and be ready for criticism. Number 3, your title makes you a manager, but your people make you a leader. Don't confuse the two. And the point there is really simple. Again, it goes back to what we talked about before with the 5 levels of leadership. That position is the first level, like a title is the first level of leadership. It's at the bottom of the rung. So to grow, it's all about your people. It's not about your title. It's all about your people, not your certification, not your degree, not your title. It's all about your people and the people that you serve. Number 4, don't preach teamwork and then play favorites. Hypocrisy kills culture. So when you have a leader that plays favorites, it is a viral infection of the team because your team knows it. Your team knows that one person can come to their supervisor and get special treatment, but these other people can't. And what that creates is dissension. That's not a team. I mean, you think about like a sports team, especially like a professional sports team. This is what they do for a living, right? They play sports professionally as a team sport, like soccer, baseball, basketball, football. You think about those. Can you imagine if the coach treated some people differently than the rest of the team? How dysfunctional that team would be? I mean, do you think they have a shot of winning a championship just because of that team element? And I would tell you, no, like they have little to no chance of ever being a champion team if they can't actually play as a team because the coach has favorites and lets people off the hook over here and doesn't let people off the hook over there. It just creates all this tension, and which builds up resentment, which builds up anger, which builds up self-confidence issues. Like, well, why am I not one of the favorites? Why am I not being treated this way? Why is he or she being treated this way and I'm being treated different? That creates such an infection that a team cannot win. They can't do their best in that atmosphere. So just remember, don't preach teamwork and then play favorites. Number 5, stop micromanaging. If you don't trust your team, why should they trust you? Now, this one needs a little bit more detail, in my opinion, because there's a tremendous difference in micromanaging somebody and then having checks and balances and accountability. Those are 2 vastly different things. One, we don't need micromanagement, right? We don't need somebody looking over our shoulder, critiquing every single thing we do ad infinitum, right? We don't need somebody sitting over our shoulder, hovering over us, unless we're in training, and that's the season that we're in where someone's supposed to be looking over our shoulder and helping us. That's different. But just day to day, like once somebody has a competency and they have their position and they have the credentials and they have the experience and they're supposed to go do their thing within the company, we don't need somebody looking over them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, micromanaging every dot that they put, every period, every cross, every T on their, in their life. That's micromanaging. However, having accountability is extremely important. So an example, just to think of an example that'd be practical, it's like someone watching over you if you take notes on a patient session and they're literally critiquing everything that you do versus at the end of the week, they're pulling random notes and auditing notes to make sure that that department is in line with what we need for billing purposes, right? Because understand that the company doesn't pay payroll. At the end of the day, it's the patients. Think about that for a second. Like the only revenue we have that comes into this center is from a successful patient treatment. and then we bill their insurance provider. That's the only revenue that comes in here to turn around and pay payroll. So it's actually, if you think about it, it's not even the company that's paying you, it's the patient. That's in every position. That's whether you're answering the phone at the front desk, whether you have a master's degree, whether you are an RBT, whether you are cleaning rooms, whether you are doing the administrative stuff, whether you're analyzing benefits for next year, whether you are dealing with HR and helping somebody understand their personal time off for the year, whatever. At the end of the day, the only revenue that comes in that pays those positions are patient sessions, right? So when we think that way, it helps us have a big understanding of like, this is what we do. We're paid to serve. And when we're serving patients is how this whole mission even exists. So it's two different things. Stop micromanaging. Yes, we don't need micromanagement. We don't need a manager looking over every single thing, but we do need checks and balances and processes and accountability to make it work, right? The last thing you want to do is have 50 notes and nobody has any accountability. And then all of a sudden the billing, Blue Cross Blue Shield is like, yep, we're not paying anything on 50 visits. Like, well, you did the 50 visits, right? But nobody was checking the notes. The notes weren't adequate to the billing company. The billing company denies the claims. And now there's no revenue for the service that you provided because nobody had any accountability, right? So we need accountability. We need processes, but we don't need micromanagement. Two different things. It makes sense? All right, moving on. Number 6, if you're not, this is so important. If you're not developing your team, you're diminishing them. Step up or step aside. So as a leader, you're developing your people as you are being developed, right? Remember, leadership is all about personal growth too, right? We're growing. But when you lead a team, it's about their growth. So are you spending time with them? If you are a department leader, are you spending time developing them? Are you spending time helping them? Again, are you spending time critiquing them? Not in a micromanaging way, but in a growth way, in a feedback way. That's the question. Number 7, if your team is afraid to speak up, you've already failed as a leader, right? A leader should be open-minded. You don't have to take every request that comes your way. You may get 100 a week. I want this new equipment. I think this policy should change. I think we should do patient care this way. I think we should. I mean, you're going to get so many ideas. If you're an open-minded leader, they'll present them to you. But if your department, like if you lead a department and they can't come to you and speak up and say, hey, I want to talk to you privately about an issue. I want to talk to you about this patient. I want to talk to you about their family dynamics. I want to talk to you about patient care. I want to talk to you in private about the work that my coworker is doing with the patient. I want to bring an issue up to you that I think you need to be aware of. I think things should be ran differently in my department. I think we should put this in place. I think we should put that in place. If you're not the kind of person that can take those ideas and hear them out from your team and flesh it out to see if it is a good idea, see if it is an intelligent idea, see if it is something we should implement. If they're afraid to speak up, then they know by default that you have some type of protective shell over you. Maybe it's a self-confidence thing. Maybe it's a entitlement thing. Maybe it's an ego thing. I don't know. It's all the words we don't want to use. But there's some reason if your team can't come to you and be vulnerable and share feedback, then there's some issue in your leadership that needs to be resolved. Because your team should feel comfortable reaching out to you and sharing a concern. And again, doesn't mean that it's something you have to take action on, but we should be the leader that will listen and seek to understand, right? That's number 7. Number 8, if you are not accountable, then you are not credible. Own your mistakes. So what that means is you're not perfect. And I'm not perfect. And I'm going to mess up. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to drop the ball. I'm going to miss the mark. I'm never going to do everything perfectly. I'm always going to do it to the best of my ability. That's my attitude and my belief. I want to show up 100% of me every day, every moment that I can. But that doesn't mean I'm going to do everything right. And so sometimes I'm going to need correction. Sometimes I'm going to need somebody to say, man, like you messed up here. You should have done this different. And we should own up to our mistakes and be willing to say, oh, man, I goofed up there. There's a big difference when somebody, and you know this in your own life. I mean, you could probably think of people by name as I talk that in your experience, whether it's at church or in your household or your next door neighbor, whatever, that they never say, I'm sorry. They never say, you're right. They never say, I'll do better. They never say that, right? It's always defense, 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 defense. You can't grow if you're in defense, defense, defense. So if you're not, bless you, if you're not accountable, then you're not credible. Own your mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. In fact, I expect all of you to make a lot of mistakes, because if you're not making mistakes, you certainly are not trying. You certainly are not trying. If you're not making mistakes, you are so playing at average in a safe zone that your patient outcomes are not going to be tremendous. Your department is not going to be tremendous. Your attitude at work is not going to be tremendous. The culture here is not going to be tremendous. Like, everything's just going to be in this little tiny safe protective zone where there are no problems. So if you are running for it, if you're going for it, if you're showing up with excellence and you have a mindset and an attitude of excellence and greatness and the mission in mind and coworkers, and we're going to have fun and we're going to help people and we're going to make an impact, then you're going to make a bunch of mistakes. And that's okay. We just have to own up to them and say, hey, you're right. Let me do better there. All right. Number 9, don't just set the pace, set the standard. Excellence is contagious. It's really, really, really easy. I'm sure 100% of you would agree with me on this statement, because I'm just speaking from the heart. It's really easy just to set the pace and to have a checkbox life where, hey, I show up to work on time, check. I clock in, check. I'm there to see my patient, the first patient. I show up in the lobby, 60 seconds early, check. I did my notes today, check. I got the rooms cleaned today, check. It's really easy just to go through the day and just to check all the boxes and say, I did it. I did what I got paid for today. But how are we going to get tremendous patient outcomes and make a difference if all we do is check boxes, right? At some point, it's the standard that we set that makes excellence contagious. When people get around you, they want to be better themselves because of how you do what you do, not because you checked all the boxes. Checking the boxes are important. But if you operate with a feeling of, man, my last patient session was horrible, right? It went bad. I don't see any outcomes. We're not hitting the goals that we set. The parents were rude, like whatever. If we drag that into our next patient session, we're doing them a disservice. And the challenge with that is that our coworkers and those that are around us, they witness that, and it taints their attitude towards what they do. Whereas we can go from that same negative experience, because negative experiences are real and they will happen, and we can still love that patient. We can still love those parents. We can still love what we do, and we can take that into our next experience and have a standard of excellence that's so contagious that the people around us know that, man, he or she is on fire, right? It's infectious. And setting the standard is very different than setting the pace. And a standard is, again, it's excellence. It's, hey, I'm going to show up and take what God's given me and give my best. That's what excellence is. I'm going to give my best. I'm not going to just check the boxes today. I'm going to go above and beyond. I'm going to have a joyous attitude. I'm going to love these patients. I'm going to serve them. I'm going to give it my best. If it's the last 5 minutes of a treatment session that's gone horribly, I'm going to be optimistic on that last 5 minutes and give it all of me and take all of what God's given me in this opportunity, and I'm going to pour it out. Even if it doesn't improve the last 5 minutes, I'm going to give it my all. It's not going to be because I didn't do my part, right? And that standard of excellence is contagious. All right, number 10. Your team does not work for you. You work for them. If you want to lead, then serve. It's very different than management. Management, old school, 40 years ago, management was all about just get it done. They had an attitude that shut up and do your job. That's what if you read any old management book, it is literally about how to build an organization where everybody just gets in line and they just check the boxes. Well, that'll be a horrible place to work, number one. Horrible experience. Number two, that would actually work in like a factory where you make car parts, right? Because you've got the assembly lines running, you've got all these parts connected, and you got shipping containers coming in and out. Like, you just tell everybody, you need to do what you're paid to do. Don't give me any excuses. Just show up, get in line, hush, and get the job done. Again, horrible work experience. Nobody would want to work there. And number two, but it actually would work in an old factory in that situation. What we do is dynamic. We deal with people. We don't deal with car parts, right? You can't just put some headphones on and run a forklift all day long here. We don't have that department open, right? That's not what we do. What we do is dynamic. We deal with each other. We deal with common patients in different departments. So one patient may go to different departments. We deal with the family element so that there's carryover back at home, so the child doesn't just have a great session here and then go home to chaos. So we have to deal with the parents. The parents are stressed out, right? So that it's dynamic on what we do. So just understand that your team doesn't work for you. You don't own them, that you work for them. A leader is all about their people. So leadership is tough because you don't just show up every day and try to do the best that you can do. You've got to be the best for your people. Show up and show out. There you go. I like it. All right. So to recap that, your team doesn't work for you. You work for them. If you want to lead, then serve. Number 11, if your actions don't inspire, your words won't either. Lead by example. My favorite quote on this is, what you do speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you're saying. Right? So your inspiration for your department and your coworkers is on what you do. It's your actions. It's not just your words. You may be the most encouraging person on the planet. But if that's all you're doing, which is great, it's great to be encouraging as a leader. You should be encouraging as a leader. But if all you're doing is sharing encouraging words and then going and twiddling thumbs in an office with a closed door, that's not going to inspire the team, right? The team wants to see you lead by example. Set the pace, set the example of excellence in all that you do, and watch your team rise because they'll see potential in themselves. And then last one, number 12. A leader takes the blame and shares the fame. No exceptions. So I'll say it again. A leader takes the blame and shares the fame. What does that look like? What that looks like, if I do something great, it's because of my team. If they or I do something wrong, it's because of me. That's a tough pill to swallow, but that's leadership. That's what it looks like. So when someone says, oh, Kevin, you did X, Y, Z so great, and it's like, well, thank you so much, but really it's because of this person and this person and this person and this person and this person. If it wouldn't have been for them, and if it wouldn't have been for this person pouring into me, and if it wouldn't have been for this mentor guiding me, and if it wouldn't have been for all these different people, then this wouldn't have happened. So thank you, but it's really a group effort, right? That's a leadership taking praise, is they don't take it for themselves. They say it's because of my people, right? And then vice versa. If something happens in the department, it's because of me. You know, my department failed, missed the mark, something happened. Man, that's not their fault. It's mine. So you may say, well, that's not fair. That's leadership. That's how it works. So when there's blame, it's my fault as the leader. You know, I could have done something better. And again, there may be room where you can cast fault and blame. But if we don't accept personal responsibility, we can't grow and we can't affect change. So if something went wrong, my fault. Something goes right, everybody else did. The whole team had a team group effort, right? So hopefully you'll take some time, reflect on these 12 things. I'll send it to you because I know we flew through those 12 things, but it is 7:56. We do have a little bit more fresh coffee up here. Let me check the chat on the live stream. Emily says, so happy for you, Eileen. God is good. Thank you for that. So that being said, guys, make it a great day because it's in your control to have the attitude that today is going to be a great day. Love you guys. If you need me, you can always holler at me. Bye, y'all.